Step out up and go hard to port. Go straight ahead and hard to port. Power to head, full.
Just moments ago, a fisherman from Deadliest Catch was tragically lost in a horrifying accident. Captain Jake and his crew pulled up a record-breaking amount of crabs, stunning even the most experienced among them.
The weather's gone to hell on us. If I get the string, we'll get it's almost 60 pots rebaited, reloaded.
As they battled the pouring rain, their thoughts were on their families, driving them deeper into dangerous waters. What happens when the wild sea tests the bravery of these fishermen? Let's expose the real dangers of crab fishing and the shocking accident that terrified viewers on live TV. The record-hauling expedition. Even when the rain is pouring down, the crew stays focused on their work, driven by the thought of reuniting with their families soon. Captain Jake mentions that they've cast their nets farther northwest than ever before, hoping for a big catch, maybe even 200 to 300 crabs. He silently wishes for a successful trip. When they finally pull up their catch, the results are beyond belief. Jake is stunned. He says he's never seen anything like it in all his years at sea. He points out that bringing in this massive haul only took 8 hours. But as the crew begins to celebrate, the sonar emits a strange, chilling beep, a signal they've never heard before. It grows louder, more insistent. Jake urgently called out to his crew, telling them to prepare for the worst. He emphasized how important it was to keep the anchor cable tight to prevent the winch from being ripped off the ship and lost in the sea. Jake was clearly upset, admitting that the other ships might be watching them and questioning their decision to try and secure the anchor in such dangerous conditions.
Oh my God! Never seen that in my life! That's 8 hours!
Although Captain Jake had lost anchors before, his biggest concern was always the safety of his crew. He promised to take responsibility for his mistakes and hoped his crew would do the same. He admitted he couldn't keep the cable tight while pulling it in and asked a crew member for help to figure out which way the cable was moving. The situation was tense as Jake carefully steered the ship through the storm, trying to free the stuck anchor without causing more panic. Even though they had just made a great catch, the crew now faced tough criticism for their mistake. In a frantic state, Jake continued to shout orders, especially warning one crew member not to stand in front of the winch, as it could break loose and cause serious injury. But things weren't getting any easier. Jake seemed confused and worried, wondering why the winch wasn't working properly. The danger grew, and at one point, a deckhand nearly fell overboard when the anchor cable almost snapped. Jake kept reminding everyone to stay away from the winch area. Thankfully, despite the harsh conditions, they managed to pull the anchor up safely. But this wasn't the worst part. As they prepared to head back to port, Jake noticed another ship coming dangerously close, risking a collision. This new threat put everyone on high alert. The situation escalated quickly, with the two ships nearly crashing into each other, causing panic among the crew. The captain of the other ship, the Wizard, knew his shouts wouldn't do much good, but he couldn't stop himself from yelling as he tried to manage the damage. Unable to confront the other captain directly because they were out at sea, his main focus shifted to getting his ship back to port safely. It was a tough reminder to keep calm and avoid unnecessary confrontations. The close call left the Wizard's captain very upset, warning his crew that there would be serious consequences for anyone who didn't follow his orders.
I can't stop you, idiot! Power up! You moron! What's up?
Captain Jake, on the other hand, quickly gave out orders to ensure the safety of his ship and crew, making sure all essential equipment was checked thoroughly. The stormy seas were a tough test, but how well the crew responded to Jake's commands would be key to getting through the dangers ahead. At the front of the boat, the captain gave the order to start the engines and head straight. Then he made a quick turn to the left and told the crew to speed up. Once these commands were followed, the captain noticed a strange vibration in the boat. He wasn't sure what they had hit, but he ended on a hopeful note, trying to stay positive. After the collision, the captain of the Wizard contacted the captain of the other ship using the intercom. He was clearly upset and blamed the other captain for reckless steering. He questioned the other captain's decisions and whether their engine was working properly. He urgently demanded to know why their ship had suddenly appeared in front of his, which was only moving at about 4.5 knots. The calm sea hinted at new troubles ahead, the strange mysteries of the Bering Sea's depths. The other captain explained that they had tried to reverse the boat, but the throttles didn't respond, leaving them puzzled about what went wrong. Hearing this, the Wizard's captain suggested the other captain check his vessel for damage and wished him good luck. He also mentioned that he would inspect his own ship. The conversation ended without any apologies, suggesting that they might have more to discuss when they reached the port. Still shaken by the close call, the captain of the Wizard felt relieved that there would be no more shouting for the moment. A crew member then stepped forward, possibly to talk about safety or to help calm everyone down. This crew member explained the purpose of the collision bulkhead, which is a compartment designed to fill with water in case of a crash like the one they just had. This feature is meant to keep the ship from sinking and could potentially save everyone on board. The captain, who might have started yelling again if the damage had been worse, calmed down after seeing that the ship wasn't as badly damaged as he had feared. He explained to the crew that their anchor had caught on something underwater.
Guys, lucky, because if it would have been just a little bit different and we hit him right with the stem, we may have sliced right through them.
Which caused the ship to swerve and nearly crash into the other vessel. He emphasized how much worse it could have been if they had hit the other ship head-on, as that could have easily torn through it. Though the other ship did suffer significant damage, the captain realized that there was no one on his crew to blame, and that was enough for him. But things were not entirely safe elsewhere. A deckhand on the Saga almost became a casualty due to the fierce winds and harsh conditions of the Bering Sea. Aboard the Saga, the freezing cold and the harsh nighttime weather made things even harder for the captains. Jake had to decide if chasing a potential catch was worth the risk to his crew in such dangerous conditions. Captain Jake shouted a warning to Jacob, the deckhand, telling him to stay alert because danger was close. Jacob, a bit shaken but not hurt, replied that the wave had hit hard, reminding everyone just how strong the sea could be. Suddenly, a massive wave crashed onto the deck, drenching everyone in cold seawater and leaving the crew shivering. Captain Jake apologized, admitting he didn't see the wave coming. Jacob described how the water flooded the deck and almost knocked him over with a coiler, a machine used for winding ropes. He quickly ducked while managing his hook line, barely avoiding getting hurt. He felt lucky to escape what could have been a serious accident and believed it was a blessing. Jacob's close call left him nearly swept overboard, but he managed to stay on the ship. He knew this would be a story he'd tell for a long time. Captain Jake, still frustrated by the sudden wave, emphasized how important it was to always be on guard at sea. He wasn't sure they could keep fishing with the weather getting worse, and pointed out how dangerous the large, fast waves were, hitting hard like a powerful punch.
I mean, look at the waves. They're already just starting to blast now.
Deciding it was too risky, he called off the fishing trip, joking that the intense waves were like Bruce Lee punches, sure that the crew couldn't take another hit like that. But the troubles weren't over yet. Over on the Summer Bay, the crew faced another challenge when a man fell overboard, turning their day upside down. Despite this, Captain Wild Bill, who had a strong and capable team, decided they wouldn't stop working. He announced they would continue fishing through the night, even with the strong currents and deep waters. He told his crew to make sure they were secured and to set their traps deeper by 3 fathoms. The crew faced the rough waves with determination, the high stakes of crab fishing. As the weather got worse, Captain Wild Bill acknowledged the tough conditions, but stayed optimistic when they found a good fishing spot. The job was risky, and when they needed someone to take on the dangerous task of working on the rail, Spencer stepped up, ready to face whatever was coming next. Davis made sure everything was secure before sending Spencer to the rail to start pulling in the crab pots. Spencer struggled to grab the buoy because of the strong currents, but he was determined to get the job done. He believed they would find a lot of crabs, and his optimism matched that of his captain. Both of them felt their determination would help them avoid any trouble. The crew's hard work paid off, and they cheered loudly when they made a big catch, excited about their success. But the celebration didn't last long. Not much later, one of the crew members had trouble with the equipment because of the strong currents, and another man accidentally fell overboard, instantly turning their joy into fear. Even with the dangerous conditions, the crew managed to rescue the man, and everyone was relieved to see he was okay. Captain Wild Bill felt those moments were some of the most intense in his life, grateful that no one was lost. The excitement didn't end there, but things took a turn. Another crew member twisted his ankle in the commotion, which could keep him from working for the rest of the season. The crew faced more challenges, especially since many of them were inexperienced. Losing a seasoned crew member like Nick was a big setback. A crew member contacted Captain Wild Bill to update him on their work and report Nick's injury. The team was worried about how they would manage the rest of the season under such tough conditions. Nick's injury became more painful, and the crew thought about cutting off his boot to apply ice. They planned to keep an eye on him overnight. The decision to get medical help was still up in the air, but with limited first aid, they were concerned about how much worse his condition could get by the next day. Nick felt a sharp pain in his ankle and quickly asked his teammates if they could take a break. He apologized for holding them up, but one of his colleagues immediately offered to bandage his ankle and suggested they get it checked out by a doctor in the morning, maybe even with an x-ray. Captain Bill was clearly concerned about Nick, calling him the heart of their team and emphasizing how important he was to their work at sea. Even though the accident was unfortunate, it made Nick realize just how much the captain valued him. This could even give him a chance to ask for a raise once he was back on his feet.
Hey, Bill, something's wrong with me. What happened?
The back of my ankle.
Which foot?
My left.
Meanwhile, two captains found themselves in a disagreement, leading to a small collision between their boats while they were docked. Captain Harley of the Southern Wind acknowledged that the winds were calmer during the day, but insisted they hurry to retrieve their crab pots to avoid any delays. He carefully maneuvered his ship to stay clear of another boat called Summer Bay, which had agreed to move out of the way by midday. Harley emphasized the need to get his ship in position so they could start lifting the pots as quickly as possible, especially before the winds picked up again. But things took a turn when an unexpected incident at Port Sours put everyone on edge for the rest of the day. Captain Harley, clearly frustrated, ordered his crew to move the ship and get a piece of equipment properly aligned on the dock. He was unusually eager to start fishing despite the bad weather, possibly chasing a rare opportunity at sea. Quiet waters were about to be disrupted. The Summer Bay's close call. Nick, now working as the deck boss on the Summer Bay, admitted he wasn't used to such chaotic situations. He compared it to a refrigerator door suddenly falling off, just another unpredictable part of their life at sea. As the captains prepared to move their boats, neither realized how close they were to a dangerous collision. Captain Harley started giving urgent orders, worried about how close they were getting to other boats. Wild Bill, watching from his ship, wasn't confident in Harley's actions and feared a crash was coming. He even thought about using a crash bag, a large safety buffer, and made sure it was ready just in case. Bill had seen Harley's poor handling before, so he asked another crew member to take over an important task on the ship. At one point, Harley asked how far they were from another boat. His crew initially got it wrong, but quickly corrected themselves, noting that the distance was closing fast. Harley's commands became more frantic with each update, shifting from asking questions to giving serious warnings. It turns out Bill's concerns were spot on. Harley's handling was clumsy at best, but this wasn't the worst part. Captain Harley, more used to open waters where other boats aren't an issue, often blamed the wind for any mistakes, even though the wind couldn't defend itself. Despite knowing their captain was at fault, Harley's crew stayed quiet. Bill inspected the new damage to his boat, a noticeable dent on the starboard stern caused by Harley's vessel. Even in the calm of the dock, the dangers of the sea were still present. With a bit of humor, Bill compared their situation at the dock to being out at sea, ready to face the storms. Bill then took a more determined stance, urging his crew to load the pots and get back to sea, showing their commitment to working through the tough conditions. He encouraged his team to act quickly, stressing how important their mission was. Maybe it would be smart for Harley to avoid sailing in such rough weather, Bill thought, especially after already dealing with one dent and wanting to avoid more trouble by keeping his distance from Harley. The fishermen on a boat suddenly stopped what they were doing and quickly called for help, needing a fast rescue by the Coast Guard. Just 2 minutes later, things got much worse aboard the Ocean Challenger. The captain had to make a quick decision, one that could go terribly wrong. Captain Keith talked about how working with heavy machinery on the boat wasn't just about handling ropes. He explained that it required a deep understanding of how the equipment worked, being able to predict how the cargo would move, and having a strong instinct about the entire operation. When the fishing season began, Keith made his usual motivational call, diving into his daily tasks with the energy of an experienced captain who enjoyed the perks of leadership. To him, it seemed like just another normal day at sea, but keeping calm might soon become much harder. During a call with his kids, Keith encouraged them to follow their passions, especially dancing, and made sure they knew he supported them. He laughed when one of them mentioned a crab dance, thinking they were joking about leaving the ship, showing just how close he was to his family. But then, an urgent message broke into this lighthearted moment, signaling the start of a serious and sad series of events. The fishermen would need all their skill and bravery to face what was coming. Keith had to cut short his family call to get ready for the tough times ahead. The Ocean Challenger sent out a distress call to the Coast Guard in Cold Bay, Alaska, which was just 20 minutes away from where things were going wrong. The distress call kept ringing out across the fleet, turning what should have been a routine trip into a situation that needed a dramatic rescue operation. A storm was brewing, bringing harder challenges, the Coast Guard's race against time. As the situation got worse, the crew's survival depended on how quickly the Coast Guard could find them, whether they were in life rafts or survival suits. In the middle of the chaos, a crew member almost got hurt by shifting equipment, showing just how dangerous things had become. As they prepared to head north for their next journey, the pressure was on. Captain Keith and his team, driven by the hope for safety, couldn't help but wonder if their efforts would be enough to get them home without more problems. As the team was pulling up a crab pot, one of the deckhands got caught between a hydraulic table and the pot, almost getting crushed under its weight. Moments like this are always tense, especially during a big haul. Right in the middle of everything, Roger, another crew member, seemed to be in need of urgent medical attention. Captain Keith was clearly concerned about his crew's well-being. He shouted to find out what was going on, his voice filled with worry, and demanded a clear update on the injured deckhand's condition. Keith quickly took charge, telling the others to let the injured man stay where he was, stressing that moving him could make things worse. Despite this, the crew checked on him, asking if he was okay, but Keith insisted they keep him still until he could decide the best course of action, repeating his instructions to make sure everyone got the message. In a stroke of luck, the deckhand managed to stand up, using a nearby structure for support. It was a relief to see him on his feet, almost narrowly avoiding a serious accident with the hydraulic table. Now he could carefully return to his duties. With that, Captain Keith turned his attention to Roger, possibly to check if he had any injuries. He asked Roger to look at him and started asking where he felt pain. Keith continued questioning Roger, asking if he noticed anything unusual.
Looking at my ice program, I mean, this thing is throwing some conflicting views here, whether or not this thing's going to be ice covered, but...
Roger mentioned feeling a heaviness in his body. To avoid making his condition worse, Keith advised Roger to move slowly and with caution. But that wasn't the worst part of their day. This time, dealing with injuries was especially tough. With fewer hands on deck, everyone had to work harder and faster, leaving little time to recover, which made them even more worried about Roger. Then out of nowhere, another crew member got his finger caught in some machinery, further reducing their manpower on the Cornelia Marie. The second week of autumn was hitting hard for the crews of Summer Bay and Saga as they rushed to meet their king crab quotas. The skippers were juggling the need to hit their targets with the challenge of keeping their team safe and motivated in these tough conditions. Just as things couldn't seem to get worse, deckhand Taylor Jensen cried out for help, his finger painfully caught in a coiler. This accident came at the worst possible time, with the crew already stretched thin and the storm making everything harder. The worsening storm made it difficult to see and even harder to keep things under control and safe. Captain Josh of the Cornelia Marie called for Taylor to come to him. Taylor's injury was a heavy blow to the crew. Captain Josh, who knew all too well how these injuries could affect everyone, realized the extra strain it would put on the team as they had to work even harder, all while dealing with the danger of the approaching storm.
We're gonna get out out just in time to pass, but there's gonna be huge rollers at the pass where the only time we can get in is high water slack. It's bad. We'll see, even then we might still not be able to get in.
Taylor's finger was seriously hurt, needing immediate medical care. But with the storm picking up, their options were limited. Captain Casey, another skipper on the Cornelia Marie, faced the tough task of making sure Taylor got the care he needed without putting the rest of the crew in more danger. After checking the injury, Captain Casey decided that some of the damaged tissue needed to be removed to treat the wound properly. He called for medical supplies, making sure they had the right tools, as the injury was worse than they had initially thought. Captain Casey understood the seriousness of the situation, knowing that it would probably keep Taylor from working for a while. Meanwhile, Captain Josh acknowledged Taylor's toughness and positive attitude, noting his usual eagerness to keep going and how he didn't like being seen as accident-prone. What do you think should be the priority in such critical situations? Immediate medical intervention or ensuring the safety of the entire crew? Comment your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe for more.